Hey everybody, welcome back to Heart of an Artist. I'm Dawn. Welcome. If you're new here, totally kick back and let me tell you a story. February was rough, man. February was rough. Back in October, when my father-in-law died, I had the next day was scheduled my mammogram, and I called them and said I needed to reschedule, and the earliest they could get me was February. So February 8th, I had my regularly scheduled mammogram. It was a Saturday, which was weird. But anyway, got my mammogram, and Monday morning woke up to a notice in my email that there was an update to my medical file in my online portal. So I go in thinking I'm going to look at a normal mammogram, and I'm greeted with a subject line that says mass found in the right breast. So I quickly bounce right back out of that, as you do. Like, oh no, if I didn't see it, it isn't happening. Took a few breaths, went back in and read it. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, this is what it is. Now, let me think for a moment and think about how this is going to play out. They're going to ask for more imaging. And I won't get a phone call today because that message will go out to the department today, and they'll schedule it for their morning calls on Tuesday morning and probably get a fairly pronto re-imaging. So I texted my husband, told him what was going on, told him what I expected to happen, and that is exactly what happened. Tuesday morning, I got the phone call. They made it for the next Friday, so I had just over a week to sit around and think about that. But I have very fibrous breasts, and so I've routinely had to get a follow-up ultrasound, and that's what they were doing. But never has it been premised with mass found in the right breast. So I knew I could not worry about it for a week and a half. So I was like, it is what it is. It will be what it will be. I have no further information. I can't let it bother me that much. So that's what I did. And we just carried on as normal. And my husband took time off from work and went with me the following Friday morning. And I had an ultrasound. And they followed that up with another mammogram. And in the mammogram room, the woman doing the mammogram had someone shadowing her. And when I was waiting in the waiting area again, because they have to run everything by the radiologist who's on staff and etc. But I see the woman who did the mammogram and her shadow walked past me, and the mammogram room that I had been in was just around the corner from the waiting room where I was sitting. I have these really good hearing ears. My eyes, not so much, right? But my ears are like elephant ears, and they hear everything. And I could hear her going over with the shadow person, like, this is how this will play out. The radiologist will bring her back in. You know, she's going through the whole thing. This is the type of verbiage we'll use. This is the type of verbiage we don't use. And I'm sitting there and I'm getting really irritated because, like, I shouldn't be hearing that. But now I know, there is a problem and they're going to ask for something more. And so they call me in and they sit me down and they say, we'll be right back. We're going to go get the radiologist. And the radiologist comes in. I can look back on this now and laugh. But at the time I was so irritated. She is this little old woman. And she stood in front of me And she just quietly told me what was happening, but there was no real eye contact, and there was no like reassuring like energy coming from her. Like, we just like to take this to the next level, just to be sure. None of that. Just here's the stuff. It was said very meekly, very quietly, like I said, without any real eye contact to me. And that really bothered me. On top of the fact that what they were asking for was I was going to be scheduled for a needle biopsy. And so I went out, got my husband, who was waiting in the outside of the office waiting area, and I walked into the car, explained what was happening, and said, just drive me to DePaulo. It's where my son works. And I just wanted to tell him in person because we were like 15 minutes away. I was like, we'll just pop in there and I'll let him know what's happening. And that's what I did. And he's like, how are you feeling? My son was like, how are you feeling? I said, for whatever reason, I'm processing, and right now I'm just really angry. He goes, oh, okay, well, that's probably normal. I was like, I don't know, but I'm just really angry. I'll get over it. I'll get past it. But for right now, while I'm processing, it seems like I'm angry. So I actually got a phone call that Friday afternoon, and they scheduled the needle biopsy, which was going to happen with the mammogram machine. So I guess that guides the needle, whatever, was happening the following Wednesday. So my husband took time off from work again. But now it's getting harder to like not have thoughts, right? Like harder not to, let's Google. Let's Google the things and petrify yourself. And like, so now I'm saying to my husband, let's talk about the things we want to do for the house. I need to talk about future things as if I have one, and he's so good. He just doesn't like try and stop me. He just goes along with me so it doesn't make it any worse. And so we did that, and I made up my mind, well, that's fine. If the right breast needs to go, I'm going to have him take both of them, and this 64-year-old woman will have them recreate my pre-childbearing breasts with my 25-year-old smaller, perkier, perfect breasts. I was like, I'm going to give my husband the gift of my 25-year-old breasts. So these are the things that just went through my mind, along with, gosh, why? Because we sat down at the dinner table one night. My husband was asking me, so how are you doing with this? And I'm like, I don't know. On one hand, of course, I'm scared. But on the other hand, I'm like, the risk factors are low for me. I said, there's no history of it, no family history, right? So I don't smoke. I gave up smoking before my son was born. If I had given birth on the day that I gave up smoking, I'd have a probably 43-year-old human walking me around. I quit drinking going on 6 years ago now. I don't eat processed food. I don't eat fast food. It's not what I do. I cook at home. It's part of my mental wellness because it shuts down all the thoughts that are in my head. So I enjoy cooking. I've not used normal antiperspirants or deodorants in close to 30 years. So I feel like my highest risk factor was the fact that I'm a postmenopausal woman, and trying to figure out if this is what's happening, why? Like, then I'm doing the angry why thing. Why? Of all the cancers, why that one? I'm not saying any of that makes sense, my thought processes. Please understand. I'm not trying to belittle anybody else's experience. I'm just telling you how I experienced what I've been through this past month. So now, one of the other things is when I went in for the ultrasound and the second round of mammograms, they had my mammogram from the 8th up on the wall. And as I'm facing away from her doing the ultrasound on my right breast, I'm looking at my mammogram. And I can see where they've marked where this problem is, this mass. Well, mass is such a word that I'm thinking it's, whatever it is, it's big, it's huge. Of course it's not. But I'm looking at it and I'm going, it doesn't look very odd to me. It just looks a lot like everything else going on in my breast, only in this particular spot, it's a little bit bigger. And I'm going, I think it's, what I'm looking at is a bigger lymph node. That's what it looks like to me. There's nothing solid about it. There's no like real definite lines. I'm like, I don't know. Because if you've not have you looked at your own mammograms? I find them quite beautiful. They look like a universe, right? There's all of these little satellites and all of these trailways. In fact, when I had my first mammogram on the 8th, I was like, can I get copies of my mammogram? And she's like, sure. And she, talked me through the process for doing that. I said, because I'm an artist and I think I'd like to paint them, but like as if there's a night sky inside my breast, right? That's what it was looking like to me. So, but also I'm telling myself while I'm looking at it going, it looks just like a bigger lymph node. I'm also telling myself I'm not a radiologist. I'm not a doctor. I am not a breast expert except for my own. So, but your mind wants to find the things, right? The reasons for it happening, the reasons why it might not be happening. Your mind just wants to do my mind wants to do all those things. So I go in to have the needle biopsy, and I didn't even hit the waiting room chair before they came and got me and brought me back. And they're like, okay, don't mean to frighten you or surprise you with this, but we're giving you an ultrasound before we do the biopsy. I was like, okay, all right, let's do it, right? Like, this is the day. This is the day that's going to tell me what's happening with the next part of my life, right? The needle biopsy is happening. It can't be undone. They want to give me an ultrasound. Excuse my phone. I'm going to turn that off. That is my husband texting me. So sure, they want to do an ultrasound. That's not a big deal. So I go in and she does it, and she's very thorough, and it takes even longer than the ultrasound I had, on the Friday, the Friday before. And she sits me back up. She gives me stuff to clean the stuff off of me, the sticky stuff. And she goes, you just sit right here, and I'm going to go run this by the doctor. And he's like, okay, cool. So whatever. She comes back, and she has the doctor with her. And the doctor says to me, look, I will happily do the biopsy. And now I'm going, wait, what? Wait, what? She goes, what I think we're seeing is an enlarged lymph node. And I break out in a big smile, right? Like, okay, so I'm not that crazy. I was kind of right. And she said, and the cortex, the outer outside of the lymph node, the cortex is what we'd be worried about. That's where we'd see if there was something wrong, that's where it would be. Not in the middle. And in the middle, it's filled with blood vessels and nerves and stuff. And she said, if we do the needle biopsy under the mammogram, she said, we have to, that's the needle that we use sucks it out. She said, so that's would cause a lot of pain and a lot of bruising afterwards. She said, if I go through with the needle biopsy today, I'd like to do it under ultrasound, because then we just would have to pluck a little bit of that cortex, the outer cortex, if I see that it's necessary, in order, just take a few cells from that. It's much less painful. You're not going to have bruising. And it'll tell us what we need to know. I'm like, okay. And then she looks at me, she goes, and that's if we do the needle biopsy today. She said, from the imaging I'm looking at, and from the mammograms and the imaging prior, she said, it was there in your last mammogram. It's just a little bit bigger. By the way, my last mammogram was in 2017, right? So she said, but I'd like to do a little bit. I also think, she said, that there's another lymph node right behind it, right? I think you're double stacked, and I think that's causing part of the imaging to look more important than it really is. She said, I'd like to, if you'll let me, go in and do some more ultrasound while you're right here in the room and see if we can prove that there's that second lymph node. Right? Like if we can get a clear image of it. I'm like, sure, okay. So she does that, and she tries really hard to do that, and it's impossible, right? It got to the point where I finally said, okay, like pain, like that's how hard we're going at me with the wand. And she goes, okay, I guess I'm not going to be able to do that. She said, but from what I'm seeing in the ultrasound, I'm seeing clean, all of it looks really normal. So what we're going to do is we're going to pinpoint with a little BB that we're going to stick on you. We're going to do that now with the ultrasound and pinpoint it and then stick that there and then put you back in for a very pointed, fixed mammogram. And we'll look at that, and then I'll come and talk to you and we'll decide what to do. I was like, okay. So that's what we did. And I walked from that room, and she went to sit me down to go talk to the woman about the mammogram. She popped her head out and said, nope, I'm ready right now. I was like, when do you get this kind of service? So I went in, and it was, no, mammograms are not fun, right? If you've had them, you know, they're painful to an extent. And this was a lot of extra twisting and pulling and weird angles to get specifically where they had put that BB in order to really hone in and get a really good look at that lymph node. So they did that. And then she got a chair for me to sit right there in the mammogram room in case the doctor wanted to do another shot. And she went and got the doctor, after showing the doctor the imaging that she got, and she came back with the doctor, and the doctor said, I will do whatever you want, but I don't feel like a biopsy is necessary. She said, everything about this lymph node looks perfectly normal. It's just bigger than it looked on the image last time. I was like, okay. I said, I don't need a needle biopsy. This is your literal job, and you're not going to not do it if you think there's any chance that it's needed. I said, I'm perfectly comfortable with trusting you that I don't need it. She said, that's fine. She said, are you comfortable with coming in 6 months and letting us look at it again and make sure that nothing different is happening? I said, absolutely. Sign me up for 6 months from now. And so that is what happened. That's what's happening. 4 mammograms and 4 ultrasounds later, in the space of 3 weeks, I'm fine. I'm fine. I came back out into the waiting room where my husband's waiting, thinking he's thinking all the time I'm in there, I'm having my scheduled needle biopsy. And I come out and I grab him and I start, you know, going out the door, and I'm sure he's confused, but I didn't want to come out. There's a waiting room full of women waiting to be called in, men waiting while their women are in there. I don't know what stage anybody's at. I am not going to come bursting out into that waiting area and do a happy dance and say, I'm fine, it was nothing. I didn't even get the needle biopsy. How rude would that have been? So I waited till we got out into the parking lot, and then I told him what was happening. And I texted my son, and then we went and got something to eat because I was starving. But yeah, routine testing can take you on such an emotional roller coaster ride. And in my case, it was 3 weeks of a roller coaster. I do not recommend it. Am I really happy with where I am now and that, you know, things could have been a lot different? I'm elated. I'm relieved. So today's Friday. That was this Wednesday. So 2 days ago. Yesterday I got up and I drove and taught one of my private students. And I came home and sat down, had a snack, and then I proceeded to pass out for 2.5 hours as my body was finally ready to just breathe. I was just dead to the world for like 3 hours almost. And I don't nap during the day. I don't. So I feel like the older we get, the more this kind of thing happens. And it's never easy. It's never fun. I'm sure everybody has a story. Anybody listening to this has their own story they can tell. Feel free to tell it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories too. It is. This aging is not for the meek of heart, is it? It's not. I mean, this time of my life, I feel like is such a great time. There's so much joy in it, you know? You're not raising children anymore. I don't have grandchildren, so I'm not, you know, helping out in that regard. So my time is literally my own. But it is not without the hills and valleys of, oops, hold on a minute. So anyway, that's where we are. I'm hoping that I can finish and put together, I've got some video of me painting, and I'm hoping to do like a voiceover with the bits of this acrylic painting from start to finish. It's a pond dinosaur, a heron. I love them. I love those pond dinosaurs. They are one of my favorite things to paint. So yeah, so next week, hopefully that's where I'll be coming to you from. This video took a few, I guess I've had a week break. It was really hard to think about. I'm not good at masking what's going on with me, and I didn't want to come and force a video and for me to be really weird because I'd be trying to pretend like nothing was happening, and I didn't want to talk about it before I had a conclusion. What's the purpose of talking about it now? Well, it's a human experience, and I'm sure I'm not the only one going through stuff like this, right? So that's all. And hopefully it validates other people who've gone through the same thing, or somebody will have watched this and then it happens to them and they're like, well, wait a minute. Okay. So, because I had nothing to put this against. You know, I had nobody who had gone through it, right? So I had nobody to like bounce off of or to tell me their experience. Well, now here's my experience. I'm putting it out there. Maybe it'll help somebody down the road. Yeah, that's the only purpose of this video, really, is sharing the human experience. I think it's important to do so. So, until next time, take care of yourself. It's a crazy world out there. Remember to keep your small part of the world healthy, happy, get some good sleep, drink your water, please drink your water, and I will catch you next time. Until then, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Hit a thumbs up. It'll help me feel like I'm somewhere out in the world, somebody's paying attention. If not, it won't stop me. I'll still keep talking into the void, but until next time, take care.